So, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is about our habits, our language, not just our language that we're speaking, but the language in our mind, so our narrative, inner narrative. Because whatever we're thinking, it's creating our outer reality. It's stemming from our deep core beliefs,
Mhm.
and we're not stuck with them if they're not serving us. If they're negative and they're limiting, we can change them. We can reprogram, because we weren't born with any beliefs or thoughts. We took them on subconsciously from a society that's not always nurturing or empowering us. I know people talk about being happy, and that's great, but it's not realistic to feel happy
No, it's not.
every day. But you can feel fulfilled every day if you're creating a life that's good for you and not ticking the societal boxes when we do that.
Hello and welcome to Go Was Here. Today I'm joined by Karen Leigh, a mindset coach, a hypnotherapist, and a person who helps others break free from limiting beliefs and step into self-worth. Hello, Karen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We have so many things to learn. And first of all, I wanted to ask you, looking back, what was the moment in your life that made you realize I need to change everything about how I see myself?
Having my children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having my son. My kids are only a year apart, so having my son quickly followed by my daughter, I wanted more for them, but that meant having to change me, to create more for them and the best life possible. But it was definitely becoming a mother that made me want more for them.
Uh-huh. So you've spoken openly about a breakdown at age
Mm.
25.
Mhm.
Can you share what was that experience like? What happened in your life during
Mhm.
that time?
Yeah, I think that was a build-up of keeping everything to myself. I literally spoke to no one about how I was feeling. So, I mean, I didn't all these labels that we hear now, self-worth and self-belief, I didn't know anything about them, but I was certainly feeling them. I couldn't
Mhm.
have given them a name, because I think especially when you're in it, it's just your normal. It's just what you know. You don't know that there could be anything outside of that or anything better.
Of
So
course.
I was, completely consumed with low self-worth, zero self-belief in my capabilities and possibilities in this world. I felt very lonely, couldn't couldn't feel I could speak to anyone about how I was feeling. Um, yeah, it was very sad, and I guess you could say depressed. Although again, I wouldn't have given myself that label at the time. And yeah, I think it all came to a head aged 25.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And was that rooted into your childhood, the way you were brought up?
Mhm.
How was your childhood?
Yeah, my
I know
childhood.
you had problems with your father,
Mhm.
so it kind of impacted the way you were brought up and
Mhm.
the beliefs that you created for yourself and others, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So my parents separated when I was around 3 or 4. So my mum was a single mum with 3 kids. She was young, she was basically single, going through a divorce by the time she was 25, with 3 young kids. And she hustled. She worked so hard to provide a good life for us. So on the outside, it did look like we had this lovely life, living in, we had a house with a garden. We had everything we needed, clothes and food and holidays every year, vacations. So yeah, it did look, but I suppose where my mum, who really, is a beautiful human, she'll do anything for anyone, was hustling to provide us this beautiful life. And I guess being young and everything she'd gone through, I think maybe forgot to nurture and be emotional and show us the love, which is all a child wants, right? A child doesn't need all these material things. They just want to be seen. They want
Of
love.
course.
And then I wasn't really getting that elsewhere from my dad either. So I still saw my dad. He actually met my stepmom when I was around 5 or 6, and we are so close. They're not together now, but I've remained, such a close relationship, friendship with my stepmom.
That's beautiful.
Um, yeah, it is. She's my biggest supporter in everything I do as well. So yeah, I it basically witnessed, domestic violence when,
Mm,
when it's your dad who you look up to and you adore and he's your hero. And then you've got this, women who you love and adore as well. And you can hear, the violence and yeah, everything. It was just awful. It completely shattered that an illusion for me of, this life, this, going to my dad at the weekend, looking forward to going and staying at his home. Um, yeah, after witnessing domestic violence, it wasn't quite the same after that, and I just felt very lonely, like I couldn't speak to anyone about it,
mhm.
couldn't speak to my friends or tell my friends, and I suppose you don't want to cause the upset with your when you go home to your mum and, you
Of
know so yeah, that was hard. That was a
did
hard part of
did
my
that
life.
affect, like, your relationship with your father? Did that affect the relationships you had with men later in your life?
So, I
The way
don't
you
actually
talk?
know if I don't feel it affected my relationship with my dad at the time. I think I was clinging on to something. Because I didn't have any other male figures as such in
Mm,
my life that were, that had that role. Um, so I think I clung on to it. I haven't spoken to my dad now for it must be 13, 14 years, but I mean that was, right up until that was my late 20s when I had to just cut my dad out of my life. I would definitely clung on to it for a long time, but yeah, I do think it affected my relationship with men and not having that protector, provider, masculine person in my life. I've
yes.
never really had that, and I think because I just I didn't have the expectation of ever having that, therefore I never got it.
Mhm, mhm. So, you also said that you struggled for 3 decades with, eating disorders.
Mhm,
Um, how was that like? How was that experience? Because there's so many people, me including, fighting with eating disorders.
mhm.
Um, were you able to finally, I don't know, manage that to, like, get out of that habit? Because it's a habit
Um,
in a way.
mhm. Yeah. Sorry to hear that because I know the struggle, and I feel it's probably a never-ending struggle, but you can get to a really good place with it, and
Yeah.
I feel the past 5
Sorry,
years.
just want to say something because I said that it's a habit. It grows to be a habit eventually.
Mhm.
'Cause, it's, of course, it's a disorder, it's a
Yeah.
mental health disorder, but, uh, for me, because it's been, for me also, over 3 decades, that I've been struggling with it, and I have, some months that I can control things, and then it gets out of control, uh,
Mhm.
but for me, I think that it has grown to be a habit in a
Yeah.
way, a coping mechanism in order to cope with my anxiety and my stress.
Mhm. I
So,
think it's
how
really
was it for you?
great. Yeah, I think it's really brave, Anna, to even say that out loud because for a long time I couldn't. And I feel the fact that, when I started to speak out, that was a big part of the healing journey for me was being able to talk about it and putting it out there. So I don't know where, because I was 3 decades as well. I don't know where you feel you're at with it. I feel for the past few years, I've been okay. And I feel that when it did come back in my early 30s, it came back with a vengeance. And I had gotten to a place where I was so healthy physically, in my head, I was, the fittest and slimmest and healthiest and happiest I'd ever been, and it came back.
Mhm,
So I got to see the before and after because when it did come back, my mood started to drop. I started to look not very, my face was puffy. I actually started to gain weight. And and my whole energy shift. And I thought, wow, how did I go from this amazing place to this, So I'm actually really grateful it happened at that time because it allowed me to see I never want that to happen again.
mhm,
So it doesn't mean, sometimes that voice did creep back in, but I had a choice in that moment. And I think, if you catch yourself in that moment and know that you have a choice and what do you want more? And so for the past few years, I do feel like I'm at a good place, but I'm still learning. You know, last year I had a chat with a eating disorder therapist, and she was picking up on the language that I was using.
Mhm.
And I was learning even just habits that I still had and attitudes that I still had towards food, that were not healthy. And I feel like I'm still learning now,
Yeah,
you know, habits and attitudes and just, that relationship you have with food. I'm still changing and learning all the time, but it's not actually active in my life. It hasn't been for a few years.
that's great. That's great. So, was
Yeah.
there a turning point that inspired you to explore NLP, hypnotherapy, and mindset coaching?
Mhm. So when I, knew that I wanted more for my children, that also meant in my education life, because I left school at 15 with barely any qualifications, didn't really sit any of my exams, had no self-belief by that point, so I just didn't see the point. And I kind of just went from job to job, and I tried going to college but never finished it. So again, when I had my children and I knew that I wanted to create a better life for them and I knew that had to come from me, I decided to go to university. I went to university and studied business. So I
Mhm.
have my business degree, but again, limiting beliefs were still coming into play. I wanted to go and study psychology, but limiting beliefs were coming in. And I thought, you know what, just do business. It's safe. I'm guaranteed a job at the end. So I did that. I was still at the very start of my personal growth journey. And I picked up a personal development book. Up until that point, I'd been watching trash TV, gossip magazines, having conversations that weren't very empowering. And
Yeah.
these were all having an effect on what I was thinking and how I was behaving. So when I picked up this personal development book, and it's telling me how good life can be and how good I can be, and I can have this and I can feel this. And it was just like, reading a love letter to myself. It was just, and it was stirring up all these feelings and my self-worth. Honestly, by the start of this book to the end of this book, my self-worth had been turned up just that little bit more. And I wanted more of that. So I made sure I actually started with social media, and we're going back maybe 9 years ago.
Mhm.
I made sure my Twitter feed back then was empowering. So unfollowed all of the sort of news pages and all of that and started following motivational people. So every day that's what I was seeing. And it was just giving me this drive. And that's where it started from. And moving on to finding NLP, I actually had a life coach who I
Mhm.
didn't know was trained in NLP. So she was actually using NLP on me without me even knowing. I only know that now, as I can see looking back. And I feel like it found me. I actually, after having my own life coach and trying to find my own passions and, lit path, because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go into maybe learning about trauma and how to help people with trauma.
Mhm.
And I came across a course on NLP that just happened to fall on some time that I'd booked off from work, the same dates. So I thought, okay, that's the one. And I booked on this NLP course nearly 5 years ago with not really, I didn't really know where it was going to take me. I just felt the pull and I trusted it and I followed it. And yeah, that's, the rest is
Yeah.
history, I suppose.
Karen, how do you define NLP, and why do you think it's so powerful in transforming self beliefs?
So, NLP, neuro linguistic programming, is about our habits, our language, not just our language that we're speaking, but the language in our minds, so our narrative, inner narrative. Because whatever we're thinking, it's creating our outer reality. It's, stemming from our deep core beliefs,
Mhm.
and we're not stuck with them if they're not serving us. If they're negative and they're limiting, we can change them. We can reprogram, because we weren't born with any beliefs or thoughts. We took them on subconsciously from a society that's not always nurturing or empowering us.
Yes, of
So
course.
if we can, be adults, grow into these adults with, disempowering beliefs and thoughts, then we can take our power back and reprogram them. That's what NLP essentially does, is reprogram your subconscious.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, and how are you able to get rid of those limiting beliefs that are so deeply rooted
Mhm.
in us? Like, because
Yep.
if we have those beliefs for so many years, I mean,
Mhm.
somebody would wonder, how much time do I need to finally break free from
Mhm.
a limiting belief?
So in NLP, we actually believe it doesn't need to be a prolonged progress. We just need to get to the root. And even if you don't know at the point in your life where, because often we don't know the significant moment when we subconsciously took that belief on.
Mhm.
And we don't need to know, but we do want to acknowledge that there was a point. And, there's something I do called timeline therapy that allows us to go back. So even if you consciously don't know the moment, your subconscious will give you something to work with so
Yes.
that you can
Yes.
so that you can take the learnings from that point, take all the learnings that are positive and productive for your future, and then let it go. And
Mhm.
then you can, replace it with an empowering belief that's going to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, but is there a certain amount of time that is usually needed for that to change? Is it different for every person
Mhm. Yeah.
individually? Yeah.
We always say it takes as long as it takes, you know? It could take 5 years. We're not gonna let it take 5 years, but,
Yeah.
it could take 5 years depending on where you're at. It could take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, you're meeting them where they're at. So, yeah, you never want to give them any expectations of how long, but it really doesn't need to be long at all.
Yeah. So hypnotherapy is still misunderstood, I think,
Mhm,
by many. How would you explain its role in unlocking our subconscious mind?
mhm. I think there's a misconception that with hypnosis you're giving away control or you're losing control or
Mhm.
the hypnotist has control over you. It's not at all. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So all the hypnotist is doing is leading you or guiding you into that state of hypnosis. Now, hypnosis, it's not taking you to another dimension. You're not going anywhere else. It's a natural state of focus. We go into hypnotic states every day. If we're reading a book and we really get stuck into the book, you're really engrossed and you can go 5 pages sometimes and not, sometimes you can even think, I don't even know what I read there. You were so in tune and focused that
Yes, yes.
consciously you were reading it, but consciously you weren't taking the words in. That's a hypnotic trance. Or if you're sitting watching a movie and you're so engrossed in this movie that you don't even know what's going on around you. People are walking around and, but you're so engrossed and focused that again, that's a hypnotic trance. So that's all it is. My job as a hypnotist is to get you to completely relaxed. There's a conversation we'll have beforehand to
Mhm.
ensure that you're reassured, that
Yes.
there's there. You've got to trust your hypnotist and to ensure that you're relaxed in the environment as well. So that's my job. There's definitely work to do beforehand before you even go into the actual hypnosis.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think that just if that sort of helps people understand what hypnosis is and what it feels like. I mean, I always say to my clients, it's so relaxing, just enjoy it because it really is. You're in such a relaxed state. And that allows your mind to open up and take in all the suggestions that are going to be super empowering and creating change for you.
Mhm, mhm. And what is the most common mindset block you encounter in clients?
It will be limiting beliefs, often that they're not good enough or capable enough of doing whatever it is they want to do or feel or have.
Mhm, mhm. And the way you work is like combining NLP and hypnotherapy at the same time, right? Do you think
Um,
it
at
complements
different
one
times.
another? Like,
So it's different sessions. So it's sometimes it will be NLP focused or NLP coaching, and then others it will be hypnosis, or they can have a mix of both on different days.
yeah,
Um,
I'm sure it's on different days or hours, but
mhm,
you
mhm,
usually combine those two uh, in order to um, help a client
mhm.
person to break free
Yep.
from
Yep.
yeah, from his limiting beliefs. Can you
Mhm.
a moment when you witnessed a client experiencing like a breakthrough that truly amazed you?
Um, Yeah, so this would be more for NLP coaching because I get to see the shifts in real time.
Mhm.
So sometimes it might be that something it might be a block like, someone can't speak up, they're just they're a yes person, they're a people pleaser. And it's just a simple question and they think, "Oh my goodness, my dad said something to me when I was a kid and that's where that came from." And I'm seeing them having this big realization in real time, and that's so fascinating, and it is really rewarding to see. And as a coach and as a hypnotherapist, you're rooting for them. You know they can do it, but they can't always see that themselves at first. So even with these little shifts that might seem insignificant, it sort of spurs them on to go on and um to create more, I suppose.
Yes, yes. What advice would you give to someone who feels trapped and defined by their past?
I would say get curious about your thoughts. Get curious about what's going on in your mind. Whenever you think about whenever you're in that and you're feeling stuck, just get curious, just I would say a playful curiosity. Don't judge the thoughts.
Mhm.
Just get curious about what's going on with your inner narrative, because that will give you clues as to where you're feeling stuck, why you're feeling stuck, and how you can move forward.
Mhm. And have you been able to let go most of your limiting beliefs?
Yeah, I would say where I am now, there's no limiting beliefs as such. However, it's never ending
Mm,
because, of course, when you do have self belief, you then want to push that. You want to see where you can take that. What can I achieve and create in my life? And what can I do and be and have? And I would say with each goal, this little limiting belief that's not yet had the chance to arise will come in, but I feel so disassociated from it now. It will never hold me back. It's not even something I feel I need to work on because I know exactly what it is. It's something from the past. Maybe something a school teacher said or one of my
mhm,
peers when I was younger said that's finally coming to the surface. Um, and I can just recognize it for what it is and let it go.
yeah,
So it's not to say, when you're doing the work around limiting beliefs, just don't be hard on yourself if they ever come up. It's not wrong. It's just that it means that you're actually pushing yourself out of your own comfort zone. And a
yeah,
little limiting belief is finding its chance to come to the surface. That's all.
yeah. And do you think somebody can do that on his own, or does everyone need a mindset coach, like, in order to help them? Is it
You
something
know,
you do on your own if you're
Yeah, I did it on my own for a long time, and I really propelled when I hired a life coach. And to this day, I still have mentors and coaches because they'll pick up on my blind spots. So there might be a challenge I'm facing, and
Mhm,
because of my own view and map of the world, I can't see there's an easy solution for this challenge or problem I'm facing.
yeah.
When I'm working with a coach, they'll sort of shift my gaze,
Mm,
and I think, "Ah, okay, yeah, that makes sense." That problem's not even there anymore because there's an easy solution to it. So that's where a coach can really come in, and they'll also pick up on your language. So like um, the eating disorder therapist I thought I had it together. I thought I was at such a good place, and she's picking up on this language that was actually still really unhealthy for me and not serving me well. So
mm,
yeah, I do think that's where a coach or mentor can come in really useful.
yeah. So when people try to fake confidence externally, what usually happens internally? What do you believe?
I mean, I think that's great. If you don't have it, I don't think there's any harm in faking confidence. It will certainly give you the feeling of it. That if that helps you and allows you to go out and do what you want to do, then absolutely. But you don't need to fake it. It's in there. No one has access to resources like confidence and motivation. There's no one that doesn't have access to these. They're all in here and here. Um, but yeah, I would say you don't have to fake it. If that works for you for now, go for it. But you don't have to fake it. It's in there. It's just tapping into it.
Hmm, hmm. And you created the Soul Sanctuary last,
Mhm,
right? So tell
mhm.
us about this.
Yeah, this is what I always say. If you have something that you think, oh, I'd really like to do that, but I don't have a big vision, or, just do it. Just take action on it, and you don't need to know the full pathway or the road there. Just do the thing, because I just had the idea of sharing my work. That was all. I felt I had done my training in NLP and hypnosis, and I just felt I had all of this knowledge and information and these techniques, and I wasn't getting to use them all in my sessions because my clients, if they didn't need them, I wasn't using them.
Mhm.
I would, you've got all these tools, but you use them as and when needed. So I just decided to hire space in a local community centre. I hired a room, and once every couple of weeks, I was just putting up little posters saying I'm doing a little sort of get together. I think I called it workshop at the time, and people started coming, and then they started coming back, and they started bringing their friends, and I thought, oh, this is kind of people are enjoying this. Like, there's obviously a need for this here, and they really just evolved from there. And then I got someone in to work with me who was doing, the drumming, like shamanic drumming.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yep. So I got so I would do so it wasn't just me talking and sharing. They were actually I would share, I would get them to visualize or think of something, something they wanted to let go of or a goal a desire they had. And then we would have the shamanic drummer, allowing them to do the visualization and let go. And so yeah, it was a mixture of both, and the kind of my circles just evolved from there really. It's just me doing them now. And I
Yeah.
do them online and I do them in person where, in my hometown in Glasgow.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's just, and now I have my very own space where my sessions are held, my women's circles are held. And I never planned that. That was not part of my vision. It's just, so I feel if you just follow the pull, the path will appear. Um,
Yes,
and you
yes.
never know. And what a beautiful journey I've had. And it wasn't even part of the plan.
Mhm, mhm. So, let's go back to the limiting beliefs. Can you tell me one limiting belief that you were able to get rid of, like, to change, and where was it rooted?
Um,
And see a real
definitely.
example, like, something that you were able to.
I think that I wasn't good enough was the biggest one for me, and this affected every area of my life. So I wasn't good enough for a career, a career that paid well or allowed me to progress. I wasn't good enough for the relationship that I wanted, the friendships that I wanted, the quality of life that I wanted. I just felt I wasn't good enough. And that was very real for me. I was watching people who were creating things that I wanted. And that was the biggest block for me was that, it wasn't going to happen for me. I wasn't good enough for that. Um,
And where did that come from?
mm, I think it came from actually, I remember being at first year of high school, and I remember having a conversation with an adult, in my family who said, "So you need to think about what you're going to do when you leave school." And I said, "Oh, I already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a dancer." And I wanted to be on the stage and dancing. I didn't know what that looked like. I was young, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I had so much belief in myself. There was no doubt in my mind that I was going to do that. And I remember them saying, shutting it down and saying, well, you need a plan B. And it was very dismissive and almost like, don't be so ridiculous. And
Hmm.
I remember I don't even remember, it's almost like things went blank after that because I'm sure the conversation continued. But I just remember the feeling inside of, if that person doesn't believe in me, then that I believe them. That's true. I do need a plan B. And then I remember shortly afterwards at school, you remember in high school when you choose your subjects,
Yes, yes,
you
yes.
get to, you get to choose what
Mhm.
subjects you want to then do. And I remember picking chemistry, and I remember the teacher saying, I don't think you're going to pass chemistry. I think you should just do basic science. And
Mm.
I remember at that point, having already been told by this adult, I need a plan B, I remember almost my shoulders coming down and thinking, okay, I give up. I'm not telling people what I want to do anymore because no one's listening. And I did. I really gave up on myself after that.
Yeah. Do you think that it only takes one experience,
Hmm.
um, to create a limiting belief? Or is
Yeah.
it more like your whole environment and, repetitive experiences that you have, those negative experiences that are able to finally form, a limiting belief?
So when we're at the point where we take on subconsciously, when we take on the limiting belief, everything that's happened up until that point will determine whether you take that on as a limiting belief. So with both of those examples that I've just given of, what
Mhm,
happened
mhm.
to me, if I'd been nurtured before that, if I'd been nurtured and encouraged and supported, then that wouldn't have happened. That would have gone over my head, and I would have thought, I don't think so. I'm going to go and do this.
Yes, yes.
Like, but because I hadn't been nurtured, and that's why you can get two people in the same household, one who, does really well in life and one who goes down a different route, because even though you're brought up in the same household, you're not having the same experience. So yeah, definitely, especially your experience from birth to 7 years old, because that's when your subconscious is forming.
Yeah.
So when whatever's going on in your environment at that time, and however you're being nurtured or not, will affect how the beliefs that you go on to take on in life about yourself.
Mhm, mhm. And, are you using NLP to your children? Are you, um, like, using those techniques in order to grow their confidence and their beliefs?
Yeah, I use some of the coaching techniques. So, for example, with my son, sometimes I'll say, "What did you do at school today?" And he'll say, "Don't know." And I'll say, "If you did know, what was the best thing about school today?" And then he'll go on and tell me this whole, thing that was actually really significant, that if I hadn't asked it in a
That's
different
yeah.
way. So yeah, it's a good one to do with kids, especially, or with anyone. But if someone says, "I don't know," just saying, "If you did know, what would it be?" And it can prompt a completely different response. So yeah, I use that. There's little coaching techniques where it's just reframing what you've said, and it allows them to open up or feel seen or supported. But yeah, definitely based on my own childhood, my kids have gone through different stages of things they wanted to be when they grow up, and I've supported it every time, even though I know that it probably will change.
Yes, yes.
They know that they can always share it with me, and I'll never put it down. I'll always support them in whatever they want to do. And I do see my children having self-belief, and that's one of the most important things for me. I homeschooled for a while as well, because it was what was right for us at that time.
Mhm.
And I think the most important thing to me is nourishing what they want to do and be in life.
Of course, of course. If you could change one common, misconception about mindset coaching, what would it be?
I think expense actually comes down to it. I think because we can go out and spend £100 on a bag, and we get that bag instantly. We've got the handbag and it makes us feel good, or we love it and we can look at it. And I think sometimes people maybe don't want to make that investment in themselves financially, because they
Mhm,
maybe don't always see instant results, or they have a preconceived idea that they won't see instant results. And I think maybe that is maybe I would say that's a barrier that I find most often for people.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. So you often describe a life that it gives you butterflies. What does that
Yeah.
like in like practically
Yeah,
with
I think
everyday terms?
For me, it's having a life that gives you butterflies is doing what makes you feel fulfilled and content in life. I know people talk about being happy, and that's great, but it's not realistic to feel happy
No, it's not.
every day, but you can feel fulfilled every day if you're creating a life that's good for you and not ticking the societal boxes. When we do that, we're going to feel probably unfulfilled and, frustrated and in conflict with ourselves, and maybe not knowing why.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, because there are so many things happening in our life, you know? Our life has its ups and downs, and it's hard to keep those butterflies all the time,
Yeah, yeah,
but doing the best you can and keeping that positivity
yeah,
is
yeah.
useful.
You know, you're right. I just want to touch on what you said, because you're right, and I don't want to paint a picture of my life's amazing every day. I think what I do have every day is a purpose and a passion for what I
Mm.
do in the life I've created. I do still face challenges and problems and hurt. I still get hurt. I still have moments of where I feel angry. It's how you navigate that in the moment. So
Yes.
I just want to, no matter what any pretty picture people paint, they're still facing challenges. But at the end of the day, it's the life they've created that feels good for them that they get to come home to.
Yeah. And the tools that you have, to go through life, because
Mhm,
learning new things that are able to help you navigate life
mhm,
easily, more easily, is a
mhm,
big thing.
mhm.
Because, it's, as we said, life is not a straight line. It has its
No.
ups and downs. So,
Mhm.
so it's good to have more tools in your pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I think those tools that can be, as I mentioned earlier about getting curious about your thoughts, for me, that's a tool that I can turn to anytime if I'm feeling off, like something feels off here. Just taking that time, meditation almost it is, just taking that time to sit with yourself. I think that's one of the best tools that we
Hmm.
can use.
Yeah, yeah. If it works for you, because I've heard many people that are not able to meditate, but they
Hmm.
find other ways
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
order to shift their focus and calm their mind.
Hmm.
Um, so how do you balance teaching people to accept themselves while also pushing them towards growth? Because growth comes with pain sometimes.
Hmm. So do you mean when I'm working with
Uh,
someone, how,
And
sorry.
that people, usually dive deeply, and sometimes the experiences that they need to remember and uh,
Hmm.
recall are not usually
Yeah.
ones. So,
Yeah. So, the amazing thing about NLP is often it's content free. I'll explain what that is, and it's not traditional therapy. So, with traditional therapy, you're talking about, painful times or maybe traumatic times. And when you're doing that, your body's responding, you're reliving it, which I don't imagine feels very nice. And
of course.
I think there's no need for that either. There's no need to relive it. What NLP does that's different is, yes, absolutely acknowledge these times. We want to take the positive and productive learnings from them, but often NLP is content free. So by that I mean my clients don't have to tell me about their painful past. What we want to focus on is what it's led to. What are they left with now because of this painful past or the traumatic experiences,
So
the
you
hurt.
don't know the experience that they,
I don't have to know. There's no need for me to know the traumatic event. What we're interested in and what we're focusing on is what that left them with. So whatever the traumatic event from their past was, whatever it is that's happened that's led them to where they are now, where they're sitting in front of me, let's establish the problems that this traumatic event has left you with. And then we want to acknowledge the traumatic event, but we don't want to relive it. There's no need. It's happened. We can't change it, but it's left you perhaps feeling anger, resentment, frustration, lost, stressed, anxious. And that's what we want to address right now. That's what we want to get to and change so that you're no longer in those states anymore.
yes, yes. But, but I think that, every trauma is different, and
Mm-hmm.
it must have, it must play an important part to us, to what happened exactly, because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if someone got raped, or if someone got, I don't know, it's a whole different
Mm-hmm.
story. So,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah. Yeah, and they
mean,
probably will tell me that, but that's all I need to know. I don't need to know
the
what happened
details,
to
you
lead.
mean?
Yeah, I don't need. Yeah, so I don't need to know the details. And if they don't want to tell me, they don't have to.
Of
Most
course,
often they
yes,
do. Most often they do want to tell me what the traumatic event was, and of course that's okay, and that allows us to acknowledge it. But that's it. That's all that I need to know. I don't need to know the ins and outs of what happened.
of
It's
course. Only
not.
if they have the need to say
Yeah.
the full story,
Yeah.
or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course. So, in a world that constantly compares us to others, how can someone remain authentic and self-affirmed?
I think it's a journey in itself, being authentic because we've grown up, with wearing the societal mask. So then it's almost an unraveling, isn't it, to take off that mask and actually get to know. For me, it was getting to know what are my views and opinions in this world because I didn't know. I was living up to society's views and opinions and taking them on as my own. So I really had a lot of unlearning and relearning to do before I could really be authentically me. So I think that's a journey in itself. And again, I would say to people, go easy on yourself. It's
Yes.
not, it is a journey, and you're getting to know who you are, what your beliefs are, what your opinions and views are. And it's a great place to get to. You get to sort of stand your ground in that and be proud of what you believe and what your views are. And who's to say who's right and wrong? It's just that's part of the beauty of it, I think.
Yeah. And as we were talking about trauma, do you believe that trauma eventually goes away, or is it transformed into something else? What's up?
Yeah, I would say it's transformed. Although I've had, traumatic events, there's nothing, I wouldn't say there's been a big, significant traumatic event in my life. I've had traumas throughout my life,
Mhm.
and a lot of these were emotional traumas as well. Um, so I would say transform them into, you know, em- use them to empower you, use them to learn from, to grow from. Um, I that's what I don't think they ever go away. They're a part of your story. They're a part of your history. And I think, you can take the learnings from that trauma that are positive and productive for your future.
And move on. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, what's a question you wish more people asked you about self-worth or mindset?
Um, someone asked me recently, do I think that anyone's capable of change? And I think, well, the answer is yes, but I wish, yeah, I wish people would ask that question more if they feel that they can't. And
Y-
maybe look for the examples of people that have, changed or created a different way of life, a way of living, a way of thinking or believing. Yeah, I guess that's the question. I can't think of another one, but I guess,
Well,
um, change is possible, for anyone.
and what is one thing that you learned about yourself um, while, coaching other people and learning their stories and seeing their transformations? Is there something you learned about yourself that you didn't know?
Um, I mean, yeah, I think I do see myself in a lot of people. I guess sometimes it brings up things of my own, and I'm learning about myself. Sometimes I can see a client having a moment, a realization, a breakthrough, and it actually prompts a breakthrough in me as well,
Mhm.
that I maybe wouldn't have seen otherwise. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm always learning. Yeah, I guess I'm always learning more about me. It's a growth journey for me too.
Is there any limiting belief you still have that you struggle to get rid of? Is there something still that
Um, so it could be around maybe the masculine, the provider, protector, male energy in my life, because it's still non-existent. So I do feel there's definitely work there. Perhaps maybe a limiting belief I haven't, managed to break through yet. And maybe when that person comes into my life, that's when it will arise and I'll get to see what that is. But
yes?
yeah, so far there probably are still limiting beliefs around that, yeah. But so far they have not come to the surface. I'm not quite sure what they are.
And what are your plans for the future?
I mean, honestly, I want to take this work as far as I can. So writing a book, taking it, further afield, more mainstream. I'd love to bring NLP more into the mainstream so that people know this is about the power of the mind and how you can create your own change internally. It's no one else gives you power. You create your own power, and I wish more people knew how they can do that. So I'd love to make it more mainstream.
Great, great. So, Karen, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your experiences. It was
Yeah.
real nice. We've learned so many things.
hmm Thank you. It's been lovely chatting with you, and it's been lovely to share this work with you and your audience as well. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, until next time, take care of yourselves. And as we say, ego was here, you were here. and that's enough.